Hey guys, just wanted to do a quick little face-to-face intro for the next project. I'm still working on the siesta, but I'm not quite sure when it's going to be finally done. It could be a few days at least, I figure, and I wanted to give you something to watch. So I've actually had another project in the works for, geez, I don't know, a year now. And it's another Predicta, and it's another mess. And I've been kind of working on that behind the scenes in between other projects. So without further ado, here you go. Yeah, I got another Predicta. Wasn't looking for one, but like so often, I get a tip, it's in my area, the price is too good to pass up. This is a Predicta Holiday. It's not in the greatest condition, and this particular one actually came from the Museum of Broadcasting, Museum of Broadcast Radio, I should say, in downtown Chicago. They are changing out the displays, and they put some stuff up for sale. I had not been to the museum, so I don't know for sure, but I presume this was on display somewhere. So a few problems right away. It's got no legs, and the screen, I mean, they often look bad, but this is the worst I've ever seen. This is made out of Tenite, plastic, butyl nitrate or something to that effect. Same stuff that makes screwdriver handles out of. It slowly deteriorates over time, and there's really not much you can do about it. Heat and humidity seem to accelerate it. Some say it's mold. I don't think it is. I think it's just the plastic decomposing. Wrong. Man, I don't know where he gets this stuff. I've done a bit of research, and yes, this can indeed be mold. This plastic is based on cellulose, and well, there's two mechanisms. I'll do a more in-depth video just on these screen covers because it's such a common issue to deal with in the future. But just briefly, this plastic is based on cellulose. It can get moldy, but it does also break down over time. It's Tenite. That's a common brand name. It's still very useful. It's still used today, most commonly probably in screwdriver handles. But they have tinkered with the formulation over the years, and I believe they now have some type of mold inhibitor as well as something to slow down the breakdown process. But yeah, and these old ones, this is very likely is some type of mold product. Alright, back to our program. And not only does it get chalky and kind of smelly, but it's actually shrinking, and that's why so often you see these where there's a noticeable gap. Eventually these are just all going to shrink up and crack and disintegrate. It'd be great if somebody could make replicas someday. The back plastic is different, and it does not shrink, so it has no issues there, but the front certainly does. I have not looked inside this set. I don't know what the condition is inside. I don't know if the picture tube's any good. It's also missing the back cover. So I don't know quite what I'm going to do with this yet. But a few things I do want to check out right away is what picture tube is in it? Is it any good? And just how bad is this? All this crud is on the inside, not the outside. They probably cleaned this up at the museum. There's a little bit on the outside, but it's pretty clean. So I want to pull the band off and pop this out and clean it from the inside and just see how bad it really is. The cabinet is kind of rough too. It's actually cracked down here, and the faux finish is flaking off, which is a real common issue. But it does have all the knobs. I'm missing the antenna, which is also a real common problem. But overall, it's not terrible. And supposing I could dig up some legs, and the picture tube is still good. This can be touched up. It certainly could be restored, and I may restore it. But let's see what we got to work with first. I got the front cover off without too much difficulty. As I've mentioned in older videos, you don't have to take off the bottom trim and take the screws off and pull the springs to hold this band on tight to get the front off. Be careful, It can be a little tricky, but you can pull the band loose and up and over the front and pop the front off while leaving the band there, or usually you can actually pull up on the band, the spring down below will stretch and you can pull the band off. In this case, it's actually kind of rusty and it's kind of stuck on there pretty good, and the front had shrunk enough that it kind of popped out. So yeah, the CRT is filthy. I already did a tusk cleaning in the middle. The stuff comes off quite easily. This is the worst Predicta I've seen in terms of the gunk. This clearly was stored in a human environment, or perhaps because this was in a museum and the front seemed to be pretty clean on the outside. Maybe they used a cleaning product repeatedly for quite some time, which let humidity get inside. I'm not sure, but I do know that the band around this is rusty. And obviously crud. So that's the CRT, and it's glass, so this stuff comes off. It's sort of like kind of crystalline. I'm not sure exactly what this stuff is. Now for the faceplate, that's pretty disgusting on the inside. This would be the bottom. I'm kind of upside down right now. But just like the CRT, this stuff actually comes off fairly easily. I did a tusk cleaning in the middle, and it's actually transparent once you get the crud off. So how am I getting it off? Well, a little bit of Gojo hand cleaner with pumice. So it's got a mild abrasive, and followed up by some Novus number 2. But you can actually, the stuff kind of flakes off. And underneath that, a bit of polishing, and it is transparent. So this should clean up pretty good. Now, as for the picture tube, well, let's see about testing it. Not much point in cleaning it all up if it's actually not good. So here we are looking at the back of the picture tube. I was able to get the socket off. It was on there kind of tight. And one thing that struck me odd right away is the key is going off to the left. I swear on other Predictas I've done, the key has been pointing down. In fact, I've got one from a tandem set right over here. And yeah, the key is going straight down, which means this could quite possibly be a replacement, which would be good, because the original 21EA P4 type CRT had a notorious short life. There is a bit of corrosion on the pins, so that might be an issue. Some of them aren't too bad. So anyways, I've got this set up for a 21EA P4, which has the 2.35 filament voltage. If it's a replacement, it's probably a 6.3 volt CRT. But let's assume it's the original. I can't tell because I can't see the label, so I'll just assume it's the early type. And I'm not really seeing any filament glow. Oh, no, it's very, very faint. Which is good, because that means it's probably not 21EA P4. Because I've encountered maybe half a dozen of those over the years. Never found one that was good. Been able to eke an image out of them, but not a good one. So, well, no shorts, no shorts. A little erratic in the cutoff. And no emissions. So, I've had this situation before where I'm not quite sure what filament voltage a CRT is supposed to be. Since it's glowing pretty dim, I'm pretty sure it's a higher voltage CRT, but one way you can know for sure is to check the current. And to do that, you can put an ammeter in series with the filament, and that's what I'm going to do, because it should be 600 milliamps. Regardless of whether it's 2.35 or 6.3 volts, they both run at 600 milliamps. Alright, so ammeter in series with the filament, and then I'm measuring 0.38 amps. So, as I suspected, it's a higher voltage CRT. So let's start cranking up the filament voltage and get it up to 6.3. Not too much. There's about 6.3. And we've got about 0.68 amps. And now the CRT is glowing quite nicely. So let's try these tests again. Short, short. Cut off. Crazy erratic. Could be dirty pin, could be CRT needs to run for a while, and no emission. That's not too cool. However, another potential issue, I'll turn this off for a moment, is replacement CRT types like a 21, no, not a 21 FDP4, but a 21 FDP4 is the official replacement. I believe that has the same pinout, but there are a number of other picture tubes that will work that have different pinouts. And one of the most common differences is G1 and G2 are reversed. So I'm going to try flipping those two and testing it again. Alright, I reversed G1 and G2. And now I do have some cutoff control, but the emissions are way high. I can't really cut the tube off. But I do have emissions, and when I'm in the emissions test, the cutoff control can do its thing. So something's not quite right. Changing the bias range really doesn't do much. So that's strange. I'm going to keep experimenting. The way to know for sure is to take this back shell off and actually get at the CRT, which isn't so easy. For that, I think you got to take the end caps off, take out the screws, and then this will come off. I'd rather not if I don't have to. Well, after more experimenting, I determined that indeed the original setting for a 21 FDP4, which has G1 on pin 3 and G2 on pin 2, is indeed the correct configuration. I just needed to let this thing warm up for a while. So now I do have cutoff control. It's been running for about 10 minutes. And emissions, certainly not fantastic, but they are continuing to slowly climb, so I'm going to let this sit for a while longer. These CRTs often take a while to wake up when they haven't been powered up in many, many years. Meanwhile, working on the CRT housing. And I've been working on the absolute worst area, again with the Gojo, with pumice. And it's doing a real quick job. I just spent a couple minutes on this, and most of the really bad area down here is cleaned up considerably. Still got a long way to go for sure with the CRT cover, but it will come clean. It's just a matter of a little elbow grease. So we know that can be salvaged. How about the picture tube? Well, it's been about another 10-15 minutes, and it's not great, that's for sure. But it's something. It should be enough to produce an image. So how about we move on to what is inside this cabinet. Believe it or not, the screen is slowly starting to look pretty respectable. The worst of the crud I actually just scraped off with a soft piece of wood, like a popsicle stick. And then I'm polishing it with Novus number 2. I don't have any secrets or tips or anything other than just be patient and elbow grease. And don't be too aggressive. And it will polish up and clean up, and yeah, it is actually transparent. There will be a slight tint to it. That's how they were originally. Bit by bit, that crud is coming off. And it will slowly come back. It's the plastic slowly decomposing. Heat and humidity accelerate it. Other than keeping it in a dry environment, a cooler environment, and occasionally cleaning it, I have no advice. You know, it never even occurred to me to ask them if the set worked, but it does have a power cord, and I'd be surprised if at some point somebody didn't try to power it up. I'm going to assume that it's not working. It does have the original back. I found an assortment of non-original screws holding the back on, so it's certainly been monkeyed with at some point. Also, this has been broken off. Originally there would have been a little chain thing going from the cabinet to the back, so I guess while you're servicing it you could flip the back over so you wouldn't lose it. Well, let's see what we've got inside. So just one last screw, and there we go. Okay, well, it's got a chassis, and it's got some tubes in it. And from what I can see, doesn't look bad at all. Some corrosion around, I think it's the width control. Let's get the original early rectifier, solid state rectifiers in it. Big box there is where the flyback and high voltage rectifier reside. That's horizontal output tube. Trying to see if there are any new caps. I don't see any. Well, and they're just kind of make it out. Get my camera in there. What I'm trying to get at is the big power resistor. This is a series strung set, and the tube filaments do not add up to the line voltage. They got a big power resistor down in there, just kind of in the middle of the screen. There's a little bit of it. It's got a few taps on it, like for the pilot light. They are very prone to disintegration. And that one looks pretty crummy. So that could very well be what took the set out, assuming it doesn't work. There's also a thermistor in there, which is also very prone to dying. There's no easy way to see the bottom of the chassis because there's a metal screen on it. I can pull the chassis out. Got to take a couple screws out here, as the arrows indicate. I'll slide out a little bit, but really you got to disconnect some stuff inside. You got to reach in there and disconnect the CRT and stuff to really pull it out. Which I'm not crazy about doing. What I think I will do is put an ohm meter on the AC terminals and see if there's continuity. Well, the power switch does something. So right now we've got infinity, open circuit. If I flick the power switch, we get about 1 mega ohm. It should be around 100 ohms, a couple hundred ohms, something like that. If this was working, so it's way too high. Could be a dirty power switch, but I'm thinking far more likely that we don't have continuity throughout the set. Just noticed something. I went to put a back on this CRT. This didn't come with a back on it. I took one from another set, and I was going to put it on, and hey, we got a problem. That's because this picture tube has a longer neck than the original one did, so this is definitely a replacement. There are quite a few CRTs that will work at a Predicta, but a lot of them have a longer neck than the original. Well, there's a few things you can do. One, you can leave the back off. You could heat this up and mush out the middle or cut out the middle, but I don't want to do anything destructive. Or I think the simplest thing to do is to put some spacers in there and use some longer screws. So, with such a high resistance reading, it seems like the set's basically an open circuit when it's turned on. Well, let's try a little experiment though. So I pulled out an AC cheater cord, got it plugged into a PR57, which is a combination variac isolation transformer, ammeter, circuit breaker, all kinds of good stuff. I'm going to try turning this on. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to turn it on. It's on the 4 amp range. I'm going to hit the power switch. Well, what the heck? It's drawing 2.5 amps. Slowly climbing, but the tubes aren't glowing. I'm starting to smell something like hot electronics. The current draw's fluctuating a little bit, and I'm going to turn it off. So how the heck can that be? We measured 1 mega ohm, tube filaments aren't lighting up. What the heck is drawing power? Well, don't have a schematic handy, but I can tell you this. There's actually 2 paths for the AC in this set. One path, one side of the AC line, goes through that big filament dropper resistor, then through all the tube filaments, and then out the other side. That is very likely open, but the other circuit is B+. The set derives B+ from a voltage doubler right off the AC line. That's what this guy's part of. That's what that AC means up there. That's actually going to one side of the AC line. There's a couple silicon rectifiers in here and a couple electrolytic capacitors. I suspect one of those caps is shorted, or maybe a diode or something in the circuit is basically shorted out to B+. And the thing that's getting hot and keeping this not from being a complete dead short is a thermistor that is in series with the power. Provides kind of a soft startup when you turn the set on. And it's likely getting very toasty. It's running around down in here somewhere. So, without further ado, let's pull this chassis out. Okay, what I did is I pulled off all the knobs, took off 2 sheet metal screws where those arrows pointed, and the whole thing pulls out to a point. Then the cable starts snagging, and I can tell you there's one thing wrong right away. This is the high voltage cable. It is not supposed to come out through a seam in the side of the high voltage box. It's supposed to go in through that hole down there. So I don't know what kind of moron did something like that. There's a fusible resistor. A little bit warm. It's not fried. If that was fried open. This actually will protect the set too, assuming it's there. Sometimes they just short it out with a hunk of copper wire, but if something was a complete dead short, this guy would pop. Let me get a better look at things. Okay, there is one repair. That white cap there is new. I don't see anything else. I'm sure some tubes have been changed. And you get a better look at that filament dropper resistor. It's disintegrating. I'm sure it's open because there's a piece of the wire wound resistor sticking out the end. Alright, now to get the rest of it out, you got to pull out this plug. This plug that goes to the CRT on the yoke. And this guy is the video signal. And then there's a couple for the speaker, which has actually already been disconnected. And I think that'll do it. Let's see what the heck's going on with this high voltage lead too. Just had to pop the cover off the high voltage box. Now you can see down inside there, and it looks fine. Very often the coating on these is cracked. It's no big deal. Throw a little Corona dope on there. This high voltage sealant be just fine. It doesn't mean they're melted or fried or anything like that. It's just age cracks the coating on them. And this, I think somebody just didn't know how to do it. That's tricky. You gotta pop the cap off of the high voltage rectifier, or at least pull the tube out. And it's very easy to break it off here. So you want to be really careful. In fact, I'm going to put the camera down when I do it. Basically, very carefully take this off, twist it out of to the side, pull the high voltage rectifier out, and then you get this wire out. Sometimes you can get it out the tube still in. Oh, well. Or just do that. But it's really supposed to be coming in down here and then go down in there. And these guys just pop off pretty easy. Like so. Also, here's a look inside the cabinet. Yeah, this has seen some dampness. You got some pretty serious corrosion down in here. But the chassis itself looks just fine. Really no corrosion whatsoever. So, there's no big deal. I believe you can get this out easily enough. Use some rust remover on it to maybe clear coat it. No problem. Here's a look at the bottom of the chassis. There is that nasty filament dropper resistor. Notice it has multiple taps. That's because one tap is for the pilot light on the channel selector, and another is for an optional UHF tuner, which this does not have. So to quickly get this filaments glowing, we don't really care about the pilot lamp, and we don't have the UHF tuner, so really we can just replace this with a single resistor. I looked in the service info and added up the resistances of each section, and it's about 38 ohms. What I dug up with is a couple 20 ohm 10 watt resistors. I'll put these in series. This does get pretty toasty. I think the wattage was around 16 or so. I did the calculation, and you always want to go over, so even 20 watts. Long-term operation, you want to go usually double, so we'd want like 30-35 watts total, but for short tests this will be fine. So I'm going to cut that out and put this in, and there is the thermistor I was talking about, but it's a little bit wrong. This thermistor is actually in series with this. It's just to give the tube filaments a soft start. What was getting warm, I suspect, is this guy, fusible resistor. This is just in the B+ circuit to prevent damage to the set if something really is completely shorted out. So I suspect we have a partial short, not a complete short, but at 4 amps this will for sure eventually burn out. I cut out the old nasty filament dropper and tacked in couple power resistors in series, so we should have filament continuity now. So another power test. Let's watch the current again. It's curious, it's lower than it was before. Now it's gradually going up, which is what I would expect if the thermistor is doing its job. Yeah, I can see the tubes in the back lighting up. as well as the CRT, but not the horizontal output tube. It's a big hefty power tube. We should be able to see it glowing quite readily. Current draw has dropped steadily too. So, a couple things going on here, I think. One is that I was wrong about the B plus supply being shorted. It could just be a very leaky filter cap and it's been slowly reforming, so the current draw is dropping. But how the heck can you have some tubes light up when one isn't in a series strung set? That's just not possible. They're all wired in series. If one goes out, they all go out. It doesn't feel warm, but there is one way this can happen. If a tube goes gassy, in other words, air gets inside, what actually happens? Sorry, my battery died. What can happen is the air gets inside, and when you run power through the filament, the air actually conducts the heat away so much that the filament doesn't burn out, but you also don't see a visible glow. I think that's what's going on here, so I'm going to pop in a replacement and let's see what happens. I didn't have a 12DQ6 on hand, so this is actually a 12BQ6, which is not always a good replacement, but it's close enough that we should get something going on. Yep, I can see the filament on it glowing. Don't hear any crackle of high voltage going on now. Not that I really expected to set the spring to life, but I thought something might happen. That was me stepping on bubble wrap, nothing bad happened in the set. Don't have the speaker hooked up right now, so I think that's what I'll do next. Okay, another test with the speaker hooked up. Yeah, awesome. Oh, but I see some smoke coming out of something in the set. And back in that area. So I'll have to investigate that further, but positive sign that we got sound, so we do have B plus going through to the set, and the filaments are all lighting up. I've got the chassis back out for a closer inspection. I kind of suspected that just replacing a power resistor wasn't going to make the set come back to life 100%. So I was starting to see some smoke. As near I can tell from just doing a visual inspection, this looks a little charred down in here, and the smoke seemed to be coming from this area. I also know from experience that this cap right here is directly across the AC line. I don't see it cracking on either end, but these are notorious for going bad. Here's my replacement tacked in filament dropper. This thermistor should go at some point. What happens with these is over time the heat breaks these joints and this disc will fall out. I've worked on several of these where I found this in the bottom of the cabinet, and this is just open. Now, the electrolytics. I was thinking, hey, maybe they're reforming, they still got some life left. No. That is nasty. The electrolyte is, or has, leaked out, dried out. Cruddy, this guy's got to go. This one, it's got some corrosion, but that could be from the dampness we saw. That's just on a lug on the can. It might be okay, but that's just a single section. It's really easy to replace, so why not do it anyways while I got it out on the bench. So what I'm thinking I'll do is, the circuit board on your side is a little tough to work on, but this stuff's all easy to get at. So I'm going to clip a couple of these out and test them to see if they are indeed bad, and dig up some replacements for the electrolytics.